So you are, I'm super excited that you agreed to do
Oh,
this, first of all, because it's not every day someone asks you to sit down and talk about your life and be
no.
on camera
I know,
and
but
record it.
I love this kind of thing. Like we've talked about, like I
Yes.
totally, it's just so exciting. No,
I'm excited that you're excited.
I am.
Um,
I just hope I do it.
when I was sitting down, I've known you, I was thinking back, it's got to be 11 years or
Yeah.
12 because Anders is 10. You did my nursery.
Yes.
I was
Right.
obviously pregnant.
Right.
And so it's hard to believe it's been that amount of time.
I know.
And I had not refreshed myself on your resume in years and years and years. So to kick it off,
Yeah.
I know it's a little not the most
That's all
fun
right.
thing,
I'll
but
try not to blush.
let me just recap
Yeah.
what's going on today.
Okay.
So when you stop and think about it, so here you are. So you're an internationally sought after artist with work. Think about this, hanging in artists' homes, very big celebrities, work in children's hospitals and public spaces. You've had creative collaborations that has landed your work in big stars like Beyonce and Jay-Z's homes, Mark Wahlberg, Sylvester Stallone, to say a few. You have work hanging in royal families. You have work and partnerships that also has your work in major brands like Target, bringing your artwork into homes across our country. And I rarely have to look at my phone for
Yeah.
this, but this is how much is going on. In addition to all of this, you're a TED Talk speaker. You're a recipient of the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, the Muse Award. And you are a woman whose life has been shaped by deep listening, imagination, and intention. You've been married to your husband, Jeff, for 30 years, who is also an artist, who is the head of the esteemed art program at Maggie Walker Governor's School. And you guys have built an incredible life together. Outside of being a writer and an avid traveler and a gardener, you've also raised two incredible women who have gone on to the University of Richmond and Yale University. We're talking big stuff. But you are someone who has quietly built a life rooted in creativity, courage, and care. But what makes you truly extraordinary to me, it's not just what you've created, it's how you've lived.
Thank you.
And
That's
so you, my friend, this is Colleen Hall, and we're sitting down today to
gosh.
talk about something that is near and dear to me, and that is that we are always unfolding, that we are always changing. So you and I met 11, 12 years ago. And I was working in real estate. Of course, so many of my guests, we have a theme through real estate, of course. You later went on to paint my son's nursery for me. And over the years, we've just become really good friends. And you're like my checkup from the neck up when I get together
Oh
with
my
you.
God, you're mine. No question about it. I
Thank
wish I
you.
could schedule you every week because you bumped me up, and thank you for that. It's humbling all that you said, and
Well,
but
I
yeah,
didn't
and
do
I
it.
feel
You did it.
no, but I feel the same way in terms of just the admiration for what you've done. But yeah, I think I can't believe it's been 11 or 12 years.
It's really incredible to see how fast time goes by. And
Yeah.
you've kind of warned me that it would, both being mothers, and I believed you, but I'm just really grateful that you're here. So walk me through. So I want to just dive in.
Yeah.
Some other things that I didn't say, but I know, you know, you yourself, not only are your daughters, and I know you're going to be shy about this, but you're incredibly bright, full ride to U of R yourself. Your sister is also an Ivy Leaguer. You went on after college. You lived in Europe, another big scholar over the ocean. Where where did you recognize early on that you had not only an academic gift, but a gift in art?
Um, yes, and I will say one of the little side branch, as a young person, I was very motivated to be a good student. And part of that came from the fact my parents, both being in the education field, my dad was a teacher for 38 years in public school, and my mother was a teacher assistant. We were motivated by the fact there was no college fund. And so aside from being a curious learner, it was actually one of those motivating sources of like, okay, you know, if you want to go to college, which it was never a question, we would go to college. We came from a family that was overeducated, under earners, people who went and worked in education, but were very, very smart people, but they had chosen different, it was never about the money. But yes, I was motivated to want to, you know, achieve, and that was extra little kick in the pants probably, knowing that that path would be through achieving, but also maybe through scholarships and or financial aid. And again, I always give credit to my wonderful big sister for figuring a lot of this system out, which is a system that it takes a lot of knowledge to navigate. And it's different now than it was, you know, 30 some odd years ago, but it still takes a lot of effort. And she was the lead on that. I always give her credit for that. I would not have known where to begin. But yes, and that's for the academic part. The art part always came, my grandmother, my father's mother, who I call Grandma Phelan, and her name was Helen, which is why my youngest daughter is Helen. She was a spirit of nature. She was an artist. She was interested in science. And I always say, as so many of us can with our female ancestors, if she'd been born at a different time, I wonder what she would have achieved in a professional stance. Not that she didn't achieve enough as being a mother and you know, wife, but she was born in Brooklyn in 1897, I believe, and she did go to college, which was almost unheard of. She didn't get to finish because she had to drop out when there was her father had something happen with his job, and so she needed to go drop out and go to work. And then she did go on to work, though, in a science lab with people who went on to become very famous scientists. She got exposed to scarlet fever and all this stuff. But aside from that, so she was a very smart scientist and always was interested in science through her whole life. She lived to 94.
So a long life.
A long life, and but she was always an artist too. And in her younger life, around 16, 17, she painted a lot. She was doing oil paintings. I think she might have, I don't know if she had lessons. I don't know enough, unfortunately. But I have a few of her paintings, and the family does, and they are cherished. And of course, one of them, ironically, is of a St. Bernard dog. So instant, like, you know, mojo with me being a dog fanatic. But yeah, so she was an artist, and she always inspired me, and she had a certain flair, and I still aspire to capture her flair later in life. In fact, I forgot, in my purse is a bangle. She always wore bangle bracelets, and in her later life, she kind of grew back to her artistic self later in life. After my grandfather passed, she would wear kind of expressive little hats, and I don't know, there's just the way she would tip her hat, and just she was just an artist through and through, and I feel far too practical in comparison, but I'm aspiring to it. But anyway, so yeah, that was early seeds and my father, she had two sons, and my dad was the baby, and he also had a flair for art. He did his artwork doing like kind of more cartoons and kind of caricature, and that was sort of his way of expressing. But he did do realistic drawings and stuff early life, but later on he kind of enjoyed doing that and sports things. And so yeah, so it kind of came through that line of the family, the art piece. But so I always knew I wanted to achieve, and this is funny, you know, just ad-libbing on the unexpected turns in life. Yes. I was always defined in my mind, and this has still been an issue with why I've had a struggle for, you know, hearing your compliments and hearing about being a successful artist, because it was never the plan. I was far too practical for that.
Right.
And
that's the funny twist.
Right, because I in my head, am still the one that was defined by my academics, not the art part. And then we'll get into, life took a little turn, and here I am. But so it's been hard for me to wear that label. Saying one's an artist is almost saying like you're a fairy princess. I mean, to be honest, because I thought it was that kind of crazy. I guess that's what,
I can relate to you with
yeah.
being a real estate agent. It's
Yeah.
not, it's, for me, it's always been like a second thought or a less than, not something like I wanted to go to school to be an attorney.
Right.
And
you had
you're-
it with the law. That's right.
So
that's
it's,
right. Yeah.
I can relate to that on
It was
so
not
many
the plan.
levels.
Yes.
No.
And it
No.
was not how I had defined myself. And that was picture of, my definition of what I was going to do was so practical based. It was, based on being the person who, yes, I was creative and I could do art, but I'd be the person who was the business person who would deal with the artist.
Yes.
So it was a much more, it seemed to me appropriate for somebody, I don't know, I guess I tied a lot into intellect and think, where unfortunately, and this gets back to stereotypes, right, that unfortunately, I guess in my heart of hearts, I had a perception of being an artist that was also maybe a little too flighty or light or, or not the strongest student. So I was not comfy with that label where being a straight A student or a scholarship, that was like, I'm all in, and so
Yes.
that has been probably a source of struggle for me for 30 years because I'm like, the label one wears and realizing that, and I've done a lot of introspection about this.
Yes. And we've
But
had
I
a
have-
lot of conversations
yeah,
about this,
we
but I want
have.
to, but not here. So
No. So
let's
you
talk it
I'm
out.
sorry. So
No,
carry,
no.
but yeah. So that was kind of the origin story of both pieces, but they've been hard to wear. It's been hard to wear both labels at once, or I perceive, had a silly idea that you had to wear one, and then I always was a little resentful of that. You know.
So is it fair to say that 30 years ago, if you could have forecasted sitting down at this podcast, your interview would have been about radical business success, not about radical art success?
Totally.
Yeah.
I
That's
would have thought
interesting
I'd be
parallel.
working in advertising. I would have assumed in account management, or right as I left that field, they were starting to do. Oh gosh, that's terrible. I can't even think of the name of it. Where basically you are that intermediary between the business people and the creatives, and
You're almost their
it's
translator.
like strategic planning. There's a different name for it that I'm totally blanking on now, but that was where I thought my success would be, and but definitely was the businessy thing. But it's funny now that I look back at it, I had no vision for what that was. I didn't have vision for this either, but I didn't have, like, beyond getting in and working at the Martin Agency, which was a goal, and I got that, and I got to work on new business, which was so exciting, and I was like watching trends, and and I always loved that stuff, but it was beyond that. I hadn't really a vision, but I was assumed back then it would have been that would be what we would be talking about, but here we are, yeah.
Here we are. And that, I think, so one of the biggest, like the catalyst probably behind the creation of the podcast is, I think it's multifaceted, but for me, I'll try and put it in a bow. I think we're living in a world of unfortunate, I'm on this side or that side.
Yes.
We're a world of divide. We've survived COVID, where we have proven that isolation is really bad, and connection is critical, and we're moving beyond that, and I think we're not taking enough time, at least from my lens, when I take the time to get to know somebody. We may have different views on lots of different things, but we are human, and we're always evolving. And people's stories are fascinating. And I think we have more in common than not.
Most definitely.
And now when you mix all of this with social media, which has an amazing, it's a great tool.
It is.
but it is just the highlight reel. And it is so easy to judge ourselves and compare
Yeah.
and, oh, this is better than that, and that person's life looks perfect. And the hilarious truth is, jokes on the person that thinks that, because it's not the
100%.
way it looks.
Oh God, no.
You know, your daughters, who
Yeah.
I'm sure they could sit in this room and talk to us about things that they feel they're misjudged for.
100%.
Because I think we're all judged, and it's a survival instinct. It's something that we've got to learn to deal with. But the podcast is about, you know, us sitting down and learning from each other's journeys.
Yes.
And you
I
have
love.
such a journey. And
It's been a journey.
It has led
not
you.
Unexpected journey. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would think that, and it's funny because you and I have shared a lot of conversations about growing into who we are. And it's always changing. And we're
Still
balanced
changing, yeah.
motherhood
Oh,
with
God.
all of it.
Which is not insignificant. Like, that's huge. It's huge to have to do that. I think, and that's where once in a while, when I would go to that place that so many women do, where I'd look at the stuff I hadn't achieved, or the things I thought I would have achieved, or I could have achieved, but I didn't. And honestly, as I've gotten older, the one thing I keep tempering back is, hey, I'm still learning, trying to be gentle with myself. But usually part of that equation to get me back on center is to say, oh, but during this journey, and those things that balls dropped and you didn't get to achieve or finish that task, I raised these two human beings. I helped raise, my husband, very important in the picture. But I helped raise these two human beings in today's world. and they are, knock on wood, successful, grown up, flown the nest. Like, that's huge.
It is.
And I have to remember, and that grounds me to be a little more understanding that you can't do it all. And even when we've been told we can do it all, which we know now is ridiculous, I did a lot in that. I'm still married after 30 years. I have 2 kids that have grown. I've had a career that I'm proud of. And no, did it include everything I thought it would be? No. And there's things I still kick myself about. But at the same time, that's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
It's going to lead us right into your TED Talk.
Okay.
So I re-listened to your
good, yeah.
TED Talk about
I haven't
permission
listened in a long
slip.
time, but I think I got it right up here.
So when you first mentioned this to me, of course, I ran home and listened to it. And I have a permission slip printed out.
Yay.
That I did.
Yay.
Talk about it.
Gosh, that was a key period in my life. I think I checked, it was 2013 I gave the talk at the women's conference here in Richmond. And I'll tell you honestly, I was going through what I call, not a midlife crisis, but my midlife reevaluation. I think it's a better framing of it. And I'd been being a professional artist at that point, I don't know, 20-some years. My girls were 13 and 10.
All right.
So I was kind of, I started to write, which I hadn't done before. And it was coming, I'll admit, a little bit from a pissed off place. Because that's where sometimes you gotta get, whereas like, I was aware that I was not taking my own self into account. I was kind of looking around and going, what's this all about? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And I was just doing a whole kind of just reset in my thinking or exploration of, is this what I want to be doing and all that. So I was doing a lot of introspection. At the same time, I was also getting very interested in women's issues and the fact that so many women in my position, in my age group, I was 40-something at the time, were struggling because we had put ourselves last in so many ways because we as women always are focused on pleasing other people. We've been socialized to be that our roles are caretaking and caregiving, and it's not about what you want, it's about what can you do of service. Well, that's all fine and good, and I lived that life, and I still struggle with it, I'll be honest. But I was kind of like, finally like, well, wait a minute, you know, a little bit, what about me, you know? And well, I didn't, and what also sparked some of my annoyance was my husband was saying to me, like, well, what do you want to do for fun? Or well, what do you want to do? Or, you know, and I'm like, it hadn't even entered my brain. The what's in it for you? What do you want? Those are really hard questions for women.
Yes.
What are you doing for yourself? Because immediately we go to like, there's usually not a quick or easy answer because we haven't thought about it. And then it also makes you feel guilty that you don't have anything to answer with. And then you're like, well, what's wrong with me? You know, that I don't have anything. So
you can feel swallowed up by motherhood.
Yeah, it's totally, as I call it, it's the juggling act, the treadmill of life. You know, everything falls by the wayside. Most importantly of that equation is our individual selves. I think many people look at themselves in that age range and don't recognize who they are. And I would admit that was kind of my situation too. You just get used to just getting through the day, doing the list, you know, taking care of what needs to be taken care of. So I started to write, I started to run because I needed a metaphorical mountain to climb, okay? And I am afraid of heights.
I am too.
So I was like, yeah, I don't really want to climb a mountain, but I like the idea of like setting a goal for myself. And thankfully, in Richmond, Virginia, we have a wonderful group called Sports Backers,
Yes.
and they offered things for myself. Like I hadn't run, I did some high school sports, but I was never an athlete. And I saw they had 10K training team, which was like kind of the couch to 10K kind of program. Where
That's what I would
get
need.
you off the couch.
To 10K.
And I went to the first session, and literally they had us like run, jog a mile, and I wasn't sure I could do it. And, you know, I did, but that was transformative because it also provides something else I've been lacking. So being a practical person, when we had our first child, I had a studio downtown, but when we were expecting Maeve, we added a studio onto our house in Bon Air. And that was great for convenience, great for being a young mom. I was incredibly isolated. And that,
Yes.
unfortunately, has been a piece that's the downside of my 30-year journey as a self-employed artist it was very, very isolating. And as you can tell, I'm an extrovert. I'm
Yes,
a people
you
person,
are.
but I have lived my life as an introvert, as a self-employed artist, except when I had wonderful clients like yourself and I could get out and be on jobs. That brought me to life. But I didn't even know that at that time that was a problem. And it's still something I haven't fully fixed, by the way, but I'm working on it. Let's see, where were we? So yeah, so the permission slip came from that. I started writing. I got kind of interested in finally reading. And this is kind of funny, but I had never read any feminist literature of the time, you know, like you hear about Betty Friedan and so forth. Well, I finally like got the audiobook of The Feminine Mystique, and I listened to it, and I was like, and I thought I was going, okay, this is all so old, you know, so outdated. And there were bits and pieces she was talking about. I was like, oh my gosh, that totally, I get that, you know. So it got me a little bit it got me a little pissed off. And so it made me want to, I don't know, write about it, speak about it. And then they had an open mic night. I still can't believe I did this.
I'm in love with the fact you did this.
Yeah, I never, very proud, again, going back to wearing my academic proud hat, I was salutatory of my high school class. That was the last speech I had given in front of a big audience.
Shocker.
But that was it. Like, I had not had any desire to speak or write, and then it kind of just came, you know. And so I went to the open mic night. My husband went with me, and of course, everyone there was like 20-something, and then here's me. So I get up and I gave the talk, and while I didn't win, there was one of the people who was there said they're going to do a TEDx women's conference, and would I be interested in speaking about it? You know, the
Yes.
permission slip talk. And I was thrilled to pieces because all of a sudden I wanted to share these thoughts because I knew part of it was, and this is where I think coming from a family of educators and I married a teacher, I think I have a frustrated teacher inside of me that likes to share. And so I'm geeky. I like to learn things. Often my family has to hear me share about them. Well, in this case, I felt like I knew I wasn't alone, and that's a big thing for me. Like, I like to find ways to connect to people where they don't know they're not alone either.
Yes.
And I knew there were a lot of women who would appreciate and enjoy this message. Also coming not from a place of, well, listen, ladies, I've got this figured out. Here's what you need to do. Not at all. It was from a vulnerable place of, I am still struggling with this issue, but here's what I have learned, and here's what I'm doing. If you have the same, go see what you can do for yourself. And that was kind of the idea, was to put ourselves back on the list, to prioritize our desire to learn and be present and be relevant and to do things for ourselves. And so that's where that came from. And, but I still struggle with it still.
You still struggle with giving yourself
Oh
permission.
my God, yes. Because, if I may, my imagery, and I'll have to forewarn, well,
just say it.
My mother-in-law, my sister would be what I would call my imaginary jurors in the jury box. Okay,
we all have people,
right? We all have it,
and we all have a jury.
And unfortunately, what do they all have in common? They're women. So sometimes I find we as women are the worst on other women in our judgment, and we know that to be true in what we receive. Right now, a lot of that was probably projection. I can look at that now and recognize that. But a little of it probably was fairly valid. So I was concerned what people thought. I was concerned about what would my mother or my sister think if I went, and aside from taking time to go run, I did that without too much problem. But the next big thing I gave myself permission to do was go to this artist and writer retreat in this little tiny town in southwestern France called La Muse. And
this is a big part of your story.
It's a big part of my story, because it was literally, I was going to have to say it out loud. Now, my husband was supportive, my girls were supportive. That was all that really mattered. However, what I was most concerned about was what would the jurors in my jury box think. And because I would have to take 3 weeks, leave my motherhood role, and go to France. Like, talk about the big evil word that comes to mind when we talk about taking care of ourselves: selfishness. And
yes.
As most women, like, to me, that's like a 4-letter word, but like, you're not allowed to do that. Like, and so that did take a lot of hurdles. And I've always been passionate about travel. This was travel of a very different kind. But it was transformative, but it took a lot for me to do it. And even there, I still, it's still an issue.
So, Colleen, you were really looking for someone to sign your permission slip.
I was.
To go to this 3-week transformative trip. I think that resonates with so many people, not just women, but certainly women.
Yes.
That, for me, like doing a podcast, for me doing anything, I think about, well, what will people think?
Right.
And the sad truth of that is that sometimes they don't even know or care.
Yes.
And so we live in this mental prison. That is not real.
It's not.
Or even if it is real, so what?
Right. Right.
And we just keep moving. And I think a real big chord that you and I have that ties us together is that we want to be awfully careful that we're not preachy and teachy.
Yes.
So we feel like we have to go through the pain. We almost have to torture ourselves to show others that it can be done.
Right.
And so
does
that resonate with you?
I think it does, and I think it comes from a place of not wanting you hit the nail on the head. I'm very aware of not wanting to come across as preachy, which would imply I figured it out, because I haven't. I'm still in the midst of figuring out. So it's that not wanting to seem like you're being pedantic when you're still struggling with the same issues. You maybe have, like I always say, it's a few steps forward, a few steps back. I mean, it's sometimes like that. And you sometimes learn these great lessons, and you're like, a year or two later, like, got to go through that lesson again, And so I am very aware that it seems hard, you don't want to come across as a know-it-all when I know how internally I know how still struggling and of a mess I am inside. That you don't want to come across as having totally figured it out. So I get, and that's, I don't know why that is. I guess it's just, again, probably because I still worry about what people think and judgment, and so I'm still stuck in the same. I know
It cracks me up, knowing and seeing what you have created. So I'm sure people are going to want to hear. So obviously, paintings and murals in very famous people's homes and spaces. How did that come about?
Well, a lot of it had to do with taking, which in retrospect I had to do a little analysis. I always thought I was very fear averse. I still struggle with fear of trying new things. But a lot of it, when I look back and reframe and honest with myself, I took a lot of leaps of faith that, in retrospect.
I see you as ferociously brave.
Well, that's so. Inside, I'm a little coward,
Oh no,
but,
that's not how I see you.
No, that's Well, I think there's always somewhere in the middle, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of that came through partnerships with. In fact, a lot of the celebrity stuff came about often because of my association and connection with Posh Tots, which is a women-run business back in the early 2000s. It was very, very successful, and they survived the dot-com boom when everyone else perished, and they flourished for quite a long time. But I had connected with one of the owners, two of the owners got to know about me, or I got my work in front of them. And that led to all these really interesting opportunities because they were kind of the zeitgeist of the children's decor at the time. So they were able to put my work in front of, celebrities. And so a lot of it came through those connections. In fact, we went up and did, so funny, the painting in Teresa Giudice's house in the Real Housewives of New Jersey.
See, that's another one left out.
Probably in 2011.
So you were in her home?
Yes, and that was quite an experience.
Yes. Tell us about that.
Well,
tell us what you're comfortable telling us.
Oh, yeah. Well, the one I will, and I've shared this story before, but it was like, I am clearly not a put together, like, manicured makeup type of person, and I'm sort of low on the...
We might have both asked each other if we had on lip gloss or lipstick before we sat down.
Yes, we did, because it's not a normal thing.
No, same.
And I was going to be going to paint anyway, so also practical. I was going to wear like my best, whatever. I was going to wear a dress or something. But when we walked in, and the two women from Posh Tots who were wonderful, they were much more fashionable, and they were dressed up a bit more because they weren't having to paint.
They're the PR.
Yeah, and they were kind of the PR businessy people. But when we walked in, I'll never forget, Teresa greeted us, and she literally did one of these.
Up and down.
Up and down, and I was like so mortified because I was also mortified. I was a little bit like, I'm from New York. I was like kind of like, what's up, lady? Like, who do you think you are? Because she's got the makeup caked on. And
she's got a lot.
Yes. And so anyway, but I thought it was just me. And then we get back to the daughter's room where we were going to do the painting. And we get in there, and once everybody's out, they're like, did she just look you up and down? I was like, oh, thank God it wasn't just me. Because I'm like, if she's doing that to you guys, like you guys have the more, persona and makeup. Anyway, so that was an interesting. So we got off on a little bit of, I would say, a not great footing. And then I think over the few days we were there, though, she really respected us and saw what we did. And by the end, it was a much more collegial and friendly and positive experience, because I think probably, if I'm honest, the fact we were coming from Richmond, Virginia sounded like coming from, the South. It's not like coming from New York or LA. And I think there might have been some judgments in that, but even though the company was known.
It's so funny how it goes back to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
We're all guilty of it.
All guilty of making judgments.
Preconceived notions.
Yeah, and things. Then, so it worked out. But yeah, so we have had some crazy things. And then the craziest part, though, was the call. I've told you this story of, I'm getting my kids ready for school one morning, or preschool for one and school for the other. And I get this call, and the woman says she's a designer, and she works for Princess, blah, 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 blah. And I said, what? I said, I'm sorry, who are you working for? And she says, Princess, and I won't say the name, but, and she said, well, she's a princess in the Saudi royal family, and, she's interested, she's seen your work, and would like you to come up and take a look. She's got this new house they're building, and she's got 3, I think it's 2 children's bedrooms, adjoining bathrooms, and then a playroom with an adjoining bathroom. We'd like you to come up and take a look and give, estimates. So I was like, okay. And so I got off the phone and called my mom right away, and I'm like, hey, Mom and Dad, can you watch the girls tomorrow? Because I think it was a school day, and I just knew I wasn't going to turn down the opportunity.
These once-in-a-lifetime calls that we get.
Yeah, so anyway,
so
and that meeting went on to be the start of 7 years or more of working for members of the royal family. It was quite a journey, and again, many stories there, but it was incredible in that, I think it was 2008, and we didn't know that the housing crisis, the economic crisis was around the bend. And honest to God, even though I have issues with certain governments and countries and ways of treating women and so forth, I was very fortunate to have the designer as a client, who then brought me these clients who kept me the bulk of my business for almost 6-7 years, and I could do the most creative things, and obviously at budgets that were not my typical,
of course,
homeowner or even a commercial space that I would work in. So it was like creativity unleashed, and I had a really great partnership with that designer, and we worked great together for a number of years. And so it was eye-opening, and just, I painted things for the king's grandson, the crown king's grandchildren, all these different people. Things got sent to Saudi Arabia to hang in the villa in Jeddah, and all these crazy things. But, it was some of the best creative work I got to do because of the uniqueness of it.
Did they give you freedom, complete freedom?
Oh, well, that's funny. Yes and no. So the funniest part is this, that I showed up, and Dahlia, who is the designer, who I love,
yes.
And I remember showing up the first day, and she's like, so just so you know, these people, they like the best of the best. They expect the perfection. They want the top of the top, so, like, we got to give them the best you got. And I'm like, nothing like a little pep talk of intimidation. But then the second piece was, so I was already like, oh, okay. Which I'm always a perfectionist, so I'm going to give it my best anyway. So that wasn't really a problem. But then she proceeded to sit down behind me, and I realized she was going to stay there the whole time while I painted, on every project, almost every day, almost the whole time.
She never left you.
No. And it wasn't because she didn't trust me, or whatever. And we became great friends through this process. But in the beginning, I was like, I wasn't used to having anyone looking over my shoulder.
Yes.
Because I was a very motivated, put my music on, do my thing. But the fact that she was a bit of a control freak. And she, at different times would have her opinion. And usually she'd let me, go in terms of anything artistic. She would defer. But on the perfectionist issue, like, I do remember there was one project where I was making these little fairies that had the head as big as my thumb. That's it, And I had done a pretty, not like I do that a lot, right? And so I had done it to a fairly detailed degree, I thought. Need to make it a little more detailed. I was like, oh, okay. So, but that was like one of the few times she ever kind of like, yeah, let's go further. But we often did these techniques, which were pretty cool, and this is dye. I'll give her credit for thinking of this because I would normally just use my paint, right? But she was very into 3D stuff. So often we'd be adding real Swarovski crystals onto the wings of the fairies, or the mermaid's tail in this underwater thing was, I used this special fabric and sequins. I mean, so I got pretty good with a glue gun. There were moments where I'm like, that contrast I have with my hat on my head, if it's the beret of the artist or the business person hat, where I was sitting there nearly burning my fingers gluing, I won't use expletives because I'll try to be,
Oh, it's okay.
certain sequins on the thing. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? You know, like even though it was a great job, I was earning really, very good money as an artist to do this kind of thing. There was moments where I was like, okay, what am I doing? But they were in the retrospect, it was incredibly interesting creative work. There were moments though where you're like, it's a job, and that's what people don't realize. Even when you're doing something like that, there are those things where you're like, all right, here goes the glue gun, and but anyway, it was incredibly creative work. We did this underwater playroom that was over the top with a TV that came up out of a treasure chest, and had this guy from Florida create these, who'd worked for Disney, create these 3D like coral reefs, and I was painting dolphins.
It was just a playground.
It was crazy, and this crazy part is I don't know that the family ever lived there. It was all for a 3-year-old little girl who I don't know ever got to live in that house, because I think they might have moved back. But anyway, it was great while it lasted, and interesting experiences,
And a treasured chapter.
It was. And the coolest, like one point, my daughters came up to visit, so they got to go. So the princess I was working for actually was living in the Tyson's Corner Ritz-Carlton. So I was put up there when I was working, which was certainly not my normal growing up, going to the Holiday Inn or that was more of our norm. So this was not my normal kind of hotel experience. Well, anyway, I would slink in after working and having, my painting clothes on and going into this place. And I remember kind of slinking in through the elevator, but before I'd go up to my room, they always had these lovely like brownies and blondies near the front door. And so I kind of go like, I looked like I didn't belong at all. And of course I felt like I didn't belong, but I would make sure I got my little blondie or brownie before going up. But the girls and Jeff got to come visit and stay up there once or twice, which was fun. And they got to go to events where, like when we went to one of the princesses' houses, and they were, I think the nanny offered them cake, and they were like, Mom, why don't we have anybody in our house offering us cake? And I'm like, well, you're not a princess.
It's the question I ask myself.
But anyway, it's a funny experience that I remember they were playing in the playroom with one of the little the granddaughter, I think this is the granddaughter of the king, and they were telling me later, like, oh yeah, we were carrying around Princess, I won't use name, in this little thing, and I'm like, oh my God, girls, please do not, like, you could have dropped the princess, like, So it was crazy. There's a lot of funny stories, but it was a unique experience. I'm really grateful to have had it. Really unique.
It's the stories that you and I shared over so many lunches have been incredible, and
Yes.
we'll have to bring you back to do another one, I'm sure, so we can sit down and think through all the things that you have learned. You've got to kind of weave into it.
Yeah.
I want to immediately say you should write a book, and I know you are.
I will, and now I've said it out loud.
Yeah,
I have to.
And we've also talked about, I know that you have led kind of creative expeditions with students, and I still firmly believe you need to with adults, and that's just my opinion.
Yeah,
We've
I
had
agree.
many discussions about that.
I agree.
So I know that there's writing. You have a big passion in pets.
Mm-hmm.
You did a whole pet series.
Yes. The Pet Story Project, which again, when you have a passion project, it's hard to make it work when you have to make a living. That's one of the biggest crises.
Can we have a T-shirt written?
Yeah, right. It's hard to have passion.
Yeah.
Paying the bills, guides one's choices when it's in a professional sense, and I'm really grateful I have done as much with it as I have. It would be great to return back to it at some point and make that into a proper book. I've got a website with it, but so many things, we have to go in different directions. But yeah, no, I think the travel piece is what's really speaking to me now. And I recently had shoulder surgery,
Yes.
so I have been put on a forced mini sabbatical, or what I'll call it, a little pause in my painting career, which has been very hard. I have a lot of scarcity issues, especially as it comes to money. Anyone who knows me knows this. So that paired with it's part of your identity, now that I've finally come to accept wearing the artist label, even though uncomfortable at times.
Now someone's taking
Now
it
it's
from
taken
you.
away. I was like, oh, come on now. Really? Okay.
I just
So
got comfortable with it.
I just was getting comfy. And so that has kind of forced me to do. But I was also, it's funny, the first visit I had to Lemieux as I'll say, needed to reinvigorate my creative juices.
Yes.
And that was a great way to do that. And that was 2014 was my first time at Lemieux. So the writing came, the talk came, then the running was happening, and then I went to Lemieux. As things go, as I say, one of the frustrations in life is we learn lessons and then we find ourselves a few years later going, oh, I got to learn that lesson again. Well, I felt at a similar point this summer, ironically, before I injured my shoulder again. I was kind of feeling like restless or not satisfied, not feeling very excited about my work, my painting.
Yeah.
And I think it was just, you need something new.
Yes.
So that was hitting, and then I got a little too into my digging in my garden on top of 30 years of big brush strokes with my right arm, and tore a tendon and had some other issues, and also frozen shoulder. So I ended up having to go in and have surgery in November. But what was good is knowing that was coming, I actually signed back up for writing class. I had taken writing classes, again, years ago. Signed back up, met this incredible group of people that reinvigorated that enjoyment. So I found new ways to use my creativity and express myself. And I loved hearing the other people in the classes work too, because their work was inspiring. And again, like you said, my dad was a big person who never met a stranger. I love hearing people's stories. I think everybody's worthy of a book or a movie. Like, I think everyone's fascinating in their own way if you get that out of them.
That's
And
so
I
great.
love that,
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the writing class was like bonus. It was therapy. It was hearing other people's stories. It was giving me a chance to digest a lot of what I've just talked about with the injury and how I was going to have to pivot yet again. And as a self-employed artist and somebody who's been doing this crazy walk, cobbling together a career for 30 years, you're constantly having to pivot. And you mentioned COVID earlier. That was when I couldn't go out and do murals. I couldn't do public projects, private projects, hospitals, people's homes. Okay, so what do I do now? I had to pivot back to doing, okay, what can I do in my studio at home? And that's when the pet thing really took place. And I was like, well, I know I'm crazy about my dog, and I know everyone else is also
yes.
crazy about their dog. So that's kind of like just out of necessity, went back to that. Well, anyway, so then the other thing that along that line was doing artwork about painted memories was this other idea I had about getting back to kind of what could I do on canvas that was something commissionable that people didn't really think of. And that was like people's favorite trips, or like painting the painting of Florence from your honeymoon, and like kind of pitching that. But anyway, then I guess fast forwarding to my new passion, or how I can take the creativity forward, is getting back to travel, because they're all kind of linked,
Well, they all are.
And that, having led these student and parent groups, I realized there was a part of that allowed me to do that frustrated teacher bit. And I really like to share things, and I'm passionate and have made I've made more trips to Europe than I care to say, because it'll sound obnoxious, but I've done it, like 10 of them probably were on credit card miles, and umpteen other by being really so very resourceful, always on a budget, creative travel. But I have seen and documented, drink things in through my camera, and always have hoped to make paintings of them. Again, maybe in the new chapter I get to do that. but it was always something I wanted to go and have that view. And I'd have to figure out a creative way to have that view on the budget I had. And so I got really good at that. And then I would take these student trips and see the joy of both the students and their parents who joined us in opening up their minds and their eyes to the world and wherever we were, in Paris and London, and we did Greece and Italy and one other trip. And last spring we took a group to just Paris for a week, and it was great. And so then I was like, I really kind of want to figure out how to do that, but again, ideally, no disrespect to the students, but like when they're all grown-ups, you don't have to say, okay, tuck in is at
Sure, it's a
10
different
p.m. It's a whole other thing. Like
it's a
we
different
were
trip.
on the spring break trip, we were a block or two from this famous jazz club. Needless to say, we'd been going. By the time 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we were conked out. We weren't going to the jazz club. Plus, it was the younger student. We weren't going to do that. But like it was grown-ups, we'd been game. And so my new concept is to think about. I'm actively doing research right now on how to make this work, and maybe test out a few venues and itineraries that will work. And my new version of it is, I love going to the cities and because people want to see the famous sites, right? But then I like the idea of ending these as like they're like educational travel art tours, but then they end with a little self-reflection and introspection and art, creative writing, or making some artwork. So, like, for example, if I did a trip that was 3 nights Venice, 3 nights Florence, we'd finish with 3 nights in a Tuscan villa that I can find. And there's so many that you can do it affordably. You just have to get there. And I'm fine figuring that out. But then bring the group there to finish it out and have great meals and give people time. If they just want to sit by the pool and drink wine, fine. But if there's people who want to talk about, let's do some writing prompts, or let's, what more do you want? Kind of, again, what makes me passionate is especially, again, encouraging other women to engage with these ideas of the permission slip and trying to, what more would excite you in your life? How do you want to, what other places you want to go? And then the key piece, having had those experiences, is what I've tried to do in my own life, is bring some of that home, right?
Yes.
So like remembering to sit on my own deck and look out at yes, it's not, the Riviera, but it is a lovely place and there's beautiful sunsets and, have a cup of coffee out there, just taking a moment to enjoy your own life as it is. But giving people that little getaway, that little break out of your world, be inspired by things, food, art, culture, views, beauty, gardens, bring it home and then, I want to I'm still trying to grow a little patch of lavender, just to remind me of Provence or whatever. Or, when the girls were little, I built a slate patio that was kind of my ode to having lived overseas and how many people had outdoor eating and dining spaces. And I wanted that and hanging my lights. And so, it's like finding ways to share that beauty, that part of the journey with others in the hopes that they then take it and run with it in whatever way it might be for them.
I think that's beautiful. Travel, for me, it just gives you a different perspective. It gives you a different way to think about things. If you're careful about it,
yes.
If you're intentional about
yes.
it, and you're right, because it's easy to go to Europe and rush, and you'll love it. You'll have an amazing time if you do it on a rush.
Right.
But if you don't stop and process,
that's the key.
And then what can you take home with you and adapt into your daily routines?
Right.
I have this cup and saucer I bought at, where did I buy it? I just bought it and they're going to get all over me. It's in Carytown. And it is creme de la creme.
Okay.
And it is a European china set.
Uh-huh.
And when I sit down to have coffee or tea in it, it gives me pause.
Yeah.
And it was money I usually wouldn't have spent on something like that. But for me, it's just a tie back to my time in Italy.
Yeah.
Because the Europeans have done something so right.
Right.
In my opinion. And that is they stop and smell the roses.
They do, and that's a key phrase I have always, people always tease me, my family tease me that I literally would do that, and I do, and I believe strongly in it.
Yes.
But yeah, and they also know that they work to live
And we've got
versus
it.
live to work. We do the reverse, and I saw that living my year in England really taught me that. My aunt and uncle were living there at the time. They were a big influence on me. And they had adapted to that, and I saw it in the culture, and then I spent a summer in France, and you just saw people enjoying their life and taking Sunday to go to the park and not, the rat race that we are all sort of addicted or almost just used to. We don't question it.
Yeah, that's
and
the
that's
scary
the big
part.
thing. And so one of my new things is something I came up with where it's really hit me. It's like, in our culture, it is a rebellious act to enjoy your life. And I kind of, that kind of sings to me because I've not been a terribly rebellious person, but in that way I want to be rebellious. Like, I want to learn how to just be able to enjoy my life. And like I said, notice I say learn how to because I'm still working on it. But I think those little things we bring in, like just stopping, having the cup of coffee, having a cup of tea that reminds you of time in England or Scotland or whatever,
Yes.
just the littlest things, and they are meaningful. So and who needs more? It's not about the stuff.
No.
Like, that's why we drive old cars. I'm in the first house I ever bought. We're very practical, thrifty people, but we've traveled more than anybody has any right to on the budget we're in. But I've done it because the memories, that is the good stuff. That's what I will take as comfort on my deathbed, is to know, and hopefully living a good life, is that I also went and saw and took things, and I learned about places, I met people. And travel, of course, the other big thing is the incredible experiences you have meeting people, just random little,
Yes.
talk, and you never know what difference that makes in anybody's life. But yeah, no, I'm so passionate about it, and that's where I think it's like, to me, it's like, okay, this brings in my love of what I love, like travel planning. I could lose myself. Like when I've been doing my research, like Jeff's like, okay, do I need to come pull you out of the rabbit hole because I'm like checking out every possible place we could stay in Provence or whatever. That's what I do. I call it the Santorini complex because literally when I planned our trip to Santorini, I think I must have checked out probably almost every possible place you could rent or stay on the whole island. So I went a little crazy, but in that, what I'm always, again, looking is like, okay, well, how do I get to have that experience, again, on my budget? And like, for example, Santorini, we had one night in the place with the infinity pool looking over the lagoon thing. That was just crazy. It was a splurge for us, but we did one night there.
Yes.
The other 3 nights at this gorgeous place that was as wonderful. It just didn't have a pool, but it was flowers everywhere and all ticks all my other boxes, And so it's stuff like that. But yeah, I lose time when I'm looking at those things. But that means I'm enjoying myself. It's the flow, right?
That's it.
And so I'm thinking if I could archive this, then I have go-to places for certain itineraries. Then that makes me happy because then I could go share them with other people and,
You need to maybe build this into your AI as you're going through this because you can tell it to remember.
Yes,
and then it will pull things back up. But that's for a different.
I know. I still haven't totally
enough.
gone down that
I don't know
path, but I'm eager to do so because you've shown me it can do some really great stuff.
Well, it can be a great tool.
Yeah, good
Certainly
tool. Good tool.
Doesn't replace our brains at this moment, but
No.
it's a good tool. So your girls, lots. I think that something that, I'm sure you're careful to not take credit for because they are their own adults who they're very, very bright. But for the parents who may be listening to this, I'm sure that you recognized early on that you had some gifted kids in your house.
Yeah.
And that in itself is I'm sure it's not always it's a great thing.
Yeah.
But it comes with its own sets of responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I firmly believe you could have another business teaching parents. It is a business to get into the school.
It is.
And it's a big business.
Yeah, it is.
So a lot of the theme of what we're talking about, whether or not, I don't know if you can see it, is you live with intention.
Yeah.
And careful planning.
It's funny because I don't ever think, yeah, again,
But
we
that's
don't think of ourselves. But I love that. That makes me feel good because to me it's always like, well, you're so ADHD and you're all over the place. That's good. I like having a thread.
It is. There's a thread. I can
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm trying to stretch here. It's just there. It's there.
Yeah.
Also with trips, like you're not someone who strikes me as this is the problem. I can't solve it. You figure out how to do it, whether or not it's travel on a budget.
Yeah.
It's how to have a career, how to be a mom. And yes, it's hard to have it all. It's not, we're always weighing.
Yes.
And our focus goes, and our success goes with where our focus is. But along that same thread, with having such amazing children in their academic accomplishments, walk people through, I know I've asked you.
Yeah. Oh, sure, of course. Yeah.
Not that I think Anders is as gifted, but
Right.
I don't want to categorize my child in any way.
Yeah.
But we're in a world where we want to give our kids everything.
100%. Yeah.
But it seems to be a very carefully curated list
It's true.
of checklist of what you need to do to at least give your child a fighting chance at getting into school these days. So can you walk us through your journey of upper education?
I will say the key thing was, each kid is different, right? And so even with my two girls, they had both very high achieving. I'll divert for a second and bring me back because the brain goes.
That's okay. Keep going.
Bring me back to the later, like preparing for college stuff in a second, but just the early piece, because I don't know if I've told you much about this, because this would appeal to both parents who are not having a straightforward, like, oh, my kid's gifted, we're on the track towards, wherever. So Helen was, both were early achieving, right?
Yes.
Maeve was reciting The Grinch at 3 from memory. I remember being like, that's not too typical, is it? I don't know. But, and then with Helen, you had asked me some of the things, like, showed their giftedness. She was opening, like, child safety things when she was, like, 1 or 2. It was scary, because I'm like, oh, take the, like, not like I was leaving the Tylenol around, but you know what I'm saying? Like, she was just clever.
So for those, and for parents in doubt, you won't be in doubt if you've got, there's a very different line between a very gifted kid and a smart child.
Yes, and I do believe all children are capable, and a lot of times it is what you do with that. And so just giving, like, we followed their interests. We did have testing done on Helen, I've told you this before, at one of the private schools, because, I admit, a little bit naughty, I paid for the application because I couldn't afford the testing on my own, but that included the testing.
So you won the WIPSI testing?
Yes.
Yes.
And that was, for Helen, was like, the lady's like, yeah, so she did the best we've ever seen on, it was like all these things. And I'm like, it was a little humbling. Now, had they come back with, you're free to it. Yeah, they didn't. But had they, I might have given that some thought. But anyway, it was we were armed then with information we didn't have. And I didn't have that on Maeve. Maeve was always, Helen was always a better test taker on those things. So we knew we were dealing with a pretty high level of curiosity and ability and wanted to feed that. So we always tried to follow the interests. So that was the key thing. Find out what your kids are interested in, foster that interest. Even if it's not what you want them to be interested in, because they're really going to guide you as to what they're interested in. Now, that said, neither one of my girls really was like, gymnastics is the key on the physical or sports front, or, Helen did do piano, and she was very into it, but she had, and then she was interested in art. So there was a lot. So we tried to feed it, but there wasn't like one avenue. So that's also, you can also feed a lot of avenues, and they'll shake out, and then you'll figure out, okay, well, that doesn't really seem to interest her anymore. One little diversion more on Maeve, because I don't think talked as much about this. So while both were really high achieving, Maeve, we saw struggle, and it used to frustrate Jeff and I to no end, with math. Like, she was so bright, and then it was like basic things, and she was like, it didn't compute. And I'm like, what's going on here? You know, like this doesn't add up. And she's high achieving, and she kind of faked it, or she worked hard and faked it through elementary. We ended up, this is another little tip, advocate for your child. So Helen, she qualified for center-based gifted for elementary school. Maeve did not. But it meant leaving your friends, taking a 40-minute drive, going to a whole other school, and you know, a lot of parents weren't keen on that idea.
Sacrifice.
We went to the open house, and Helen heard about the field trip, and she's like, I want to go. And she didn't care that she was leaving her friends behind. So she wanted to follow the line of the most challenging creative path, or curious path. So we said yes. Other people might not have made that decision because it was putting your kid on a bus for 40 minutes, and it was a totally different school from the home school and all that stuff. So she ended up at Henning, loved it, was great for her, made lifelong friends there.
You know, my niece chose not to.
Okay, see.
Casey's little girl chose not to.
Okay, and see, and it can go either way,
It's
right?
wild.
And so it was good for Helen. Maeve, again, didn't test and didn't have as an option. So come forwards in middle school, Helen got into the center-based gifted, no problem. Maeve was right at that cusp. I made the point, as a parent, I knew that was the place she would, like, rising tide lifts all boats. I really believe
Stretch
that.
it.
I just knew that in that environment, they were curious learners, eager students. That's where I knew she would perform the best, and it would help her, nudge her. And so I had to ask for I don't know, what they call it, like a temporary status, like she had to.
An exception.
Exception. Like they said yes with this understanding they could evaluate if she could cut the mustard, you know, once she was there. And thankfully, she got in and just thrived. Except that's when the math and the foreign language stuff caught up. Now, it wasn't like she was failing out or anything, but she was struggling. And we, again, did not know what was the deal, because she was so bright on so many things. She never could spell well. But
we're not good at everything.
No. And so, guess what? By 7th grade, we're like, yeah, okay. Because she did so well in school, the school wouldn't do the testing. Because we said, I think she's got some kind of learning disability when it comes to math. So we went and paid the money for the testing. Best decision, best money ever spent. Found out she had some form of dyslexia that was regarding math and foreign language.
I did
specifically.
not know that.
I didn't even know there was a thing. And so it finally made sense. She also got diagnosed with ADHD, and when it came to processing things, her brain just worked in a different way and worked a little bit slower in putting it together. She'd get to the right answer, but it would take a different, like, processing speed, where that was a strength for Helen, that was not for Maeve. And enough that testing allowed her to get certain accommodations that were key to her success. That if I had not, had I not put her in the place that pushed her, had I not then noticed there was a struggle and then paid for the testing, it would have changed the trajectory of her success. Because once we had that, we were armed with the information. And I will say Chesterfield Public Schools were excellent in taking what we had and making accommodations that allowed her a little more time. She could get notes from the teacher if she needed, like, reinforcement, especially when it came to math and the foreign language. Those were her two real struggle areas. The other stuff she was doing great, you know. But then fast forward to high school, and when you're getting ready for the horrible and dreaded SATs, ACT, she was, again, not my best test taker. Helen almost got perfect score, you know, on both. Maeve, it was more of a struggle. She never did as well in SAT as she did the ACT, so I give that tip to parents. Try both, because it appeals to different kinds of learners. I think some people do better on one versus the other. But because she had that extra time to accommodate for the math and stuff, she did very well. I can't remember now what she got. But she did really well, to the point where she was almost at the cusp for scholarship stuff at U of R and stuff, like for the merit scholarships. She might have needed one more point, but like that would not have happened without the time and a half or whatever it was. Now, people could say, oh, well, that's, seems an unfair advantage. Well, I totally wasn't doing it to be trying to cheat for her. But because she had these issues that, quite frankly, had I not done the testing, had we not paid for the testing, we wouldn't know. And she wouldn't have done as well. And she would, it snowballs, right? She would have, because through elementary school, she could keep up and do well enough to mask those disabilities, if you will, academic learning issues. But when it hit the middle school and things started to ramp up, that's when things started to fall apart.
Yeah.
So, noticing where the kids have issues, getting them help, and then we did some tutoring and we, but those accommodations, that made a huge difference for her. And she be the first, and that really, made a huge difference. But back to, so, your kids are in middle school, looking ahead to high school. One of the things, again, looking at their interests, trying to not being mercenary about it, but keeping track of do they seem like they're a well-rounded student? Are they, if they're a sporty kid, great, encourage them to find a sport. If not, don't push something they're not interested in just to say you can check the box on the sports category. Because a lot of schools really do like to also see one trajectory of passion that stays throughout. And so whether it's art or music or it is sports or it's civic service, one of the things Maeve had that really helped her was a passion for helping others in the environment that she fostered in elementary school. I mean, she was really quite amazing. And that carried on through middle school into high school. And honestly, I think it made her stand out, that there was this continued interest in helping people and raising awareness about the environment. She did this whole big walk for water back in 5th grade, So she, finding if your kid has a passion for something and helping them to make that into part of their story. Because in the end, what you're doing is you're telling the story. Yes. You are selling the school on this person as what makes them unique. And it's not trying to be braggy, you have to get over all that. This is the time. This is the time where don't hide your light under a bushel basket, as my mother would say. You have to put it out there. Let's see. I'm getting back to again what to be armed with. So I always had my kids made. We called it the brag sheet. Okay, that was actually this is from my sister. Thank you, yes. Eileen. My sister had done this when we were going through, because I, again, learned from my sister how you applied for both academic scholarships and financial aid and how you stood apart. Now, back then was child's play compared to now. But we did have a brag sheet, so you wrote down and keep a little running list, all things the kids do. You can go back to middle school, because then you start writing a trajectory. And even in some of her college essays, as I said, Maeve's arc was so far ago and showed a compassion early in life that I think she did even mention that walk for water back in 5th grade. So you never know what it's going to be, but try to see where there's an arc of a story there. What turns that kid on? What makes them excited? And then what else? Yes, the brag sheet. Obviously, testing does matter. It matters a little less now than it used to. It still matters. So I'm a big believer. Again, a la my sister Eileen, just start studying early for those tests. So I think by 10th grade, my sister probably started 9th grade. 10th or 11th grade, I was doing some practice tests. Back then, we only had an old occasional workbook, But doing that, and, if they need to, take an old class. A lot of the school systems offer a class. There's obviously private tutors as well. Both my girls did did some practice tests, and I will say there was a tutor, especially for Maeve with the math stuff, because I was it was so many years for me. I was pass that baton. But again, and I'll be as a thrifty person and public school teacher, artist budget, a lot of these things are expensive.
Oh yes.
And so we had for each kid, I'm okay, you can go to X number of sessions. Now that may be less limited for people with more resources. And people can choose if that's what they want to spend it on. But for us, we did get a little help, and honestly, it did help.
Oh yeah,
it did. But the just doing even the free stuff. There's a lot of tools that are free, And what's that one? Khan Academy also has great stuff on all this. That's free. So, and I will say, circling back to the beginning, in my family and for my girls, they'll tease. They'll make it sound like we said they couldn't go to college unless they got a scholarship. But that was not what I said. They had the same prompt that my parents gave us. There was no college fund.
Yes.
Because early on in our parenthood days, I had to have a discussion with Jeff, who was very much like, we need to be putting in 529. I said, look, I know how this system works, and I don't mean to be mercenary again about it, but like we will possibly qualify for financial aid, depends on where we are. So just have to understand, we were always behind the eight ball on retirement because Jeff had no match and he was a school teacher. I didn't put in for years. I had nothing left over. So I was like, well, gosh, there's no scholarship or financial aid for retirement. So we're going to focus on that. And, if we have leftovers and we want to put in 529, fine. But that's our priority. And he was really nervous that I was going to be wrong.
Yeah, but the financial gurus would have totally agreed with you on that.
Yeah, because people understand it depends. Obviously, if you got to look at what the qualification numbers are. If you think you would qualify for aid, having the 529 has come right off the top.
Right.
And so not to sound like, but that's learning the system, right? So people who know what tax benefits they can get in tax cut, like it's knowing what fits for your situation and knowing where your family would fit in if it comes to financial aid. So you know whether you're playing the financial aid game of qualifying, or are you playing, and for so many people who make more money than they will qualify, then they're in the merit scholarship hunt. And they're two totally different things, and people like us, we're trying to address both. Because, and I know people who, most people who have a lot of resources will get the financial aid qualification, have to chase the merit. And that's the other piece. There are 40 schools. I'll have to go ahead and share the big news. There's only 40 schools, it may have increased by a few here or there, that will assure full financial aid need met. Okay, so if the families think they'll qualify, you want your kid ideally applying to some of those schools, because if they get in, they will get their full financial need met. Whereas if they apply to a great school like Virginia Tech and other ones in the state of Virginia, Virginia Tech, JMU, they are not 100% financial aid need met. So, now, of course, that pairs with UVA and William & Mary do. Those are much harder to get into. There's a reason.
Sure.
See how that pairs off, right?
Yes.
So, but if your kid can get into one of those and you have that financial need, it's going to be met 100%. That, to me, makes very clear where you would, if the kid can get in, that's the place to go, right? Whereas, and then with the merit, I think it's similar. I think it's about 40 schools that have scholarships that are full merit scholarships or partial merit scholarships. And you have to know where those are. So the kids that are high achievers, but mom and dad earn more money than financial aid allows for, those are the schools those kids want to look at.
See, this is why you need to be teaching a class and having this. Not that I'm not trying to create your life's work.
No.
You have a lot of passions.
Still think, well, you could, and I'm passionate about it also in that sharing the information,
Of
right?
course.
So the teacher part comes out, and I'm passionate about it because it helped my family. Again, kudos to my sister for opening the door, but like it helped my family when I was a kid. It helped my family now as a mom. I like the idea that would help other families to navigate this very confusing system, and also encourage, especially for those people who didn't have, somebody like my sister in their life to open the door for them, because it's knowledge, and I like to share that because there's so many people who could otherwise be eligible for some of these things, and they don't even know about it.
That's the shame.
It is.
When I think about like bringing it all like full circle, bringing it back, all of that intelligence and straight A's and full rides and graduating top of your class has served you in so many different ways, and it certainly served you in the way you raised your daughters and going on to higher education. It wasn't lost.
No,
wasn't for nothing.
no,
I hope
no.
you know that.
That's true. That's true. No, that's very true. Yeah.
You know, I think interestingly enough, and we'll have to sit down and talk again because we just literally just scratched the surface here. But you know, you and I are working. If maybe I'll say it like this to end. I feel like you and I are working on some very similar things in our lives.
Yes.
We're in totally different chapters, but we're both working on building a table big enough and inviting people to join us at the table through service, we'll show you how it's done.
Yeah.
And we're very interested in giving.
Yes.
And giving back.
Yes.
And it's a really cool place to set. And sometimes I feel like I'm still an observer. You probably are more sitting at the table than I am. I'm still earning it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're all at. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm hopefully getting to the point of trying to move beyond the fear of wherever it is that I am, and just doing it. That's the part that
You've kept in motion.
I have
You've
moved
kept
forward.
in motion,
Yeah.
and I've talked about this on other podcasts that when the anxiety hits me and when the doubt hits me, my secret weapon is to move.
Yeah.
To do something.
Right.
To move the piece along the puzzle of life.
Yeah.
And to not sit and stagnate.
No.
And you're proof. I mean,
thank you.
I can't wait to see what else you continue to build as you navigate through this next chapter in your life.
It's exciting. I am feeling excited. I was, in my fall writing class, did this one little essay where I got to kind of vent and stew about things and loss that I've experienced.
Yeah.
90-year-old mothers going through memory loss. I've lost my dad. I've lost my dog, and my girls are flown the nest. And I was processing. Writing to me is like support therapy and processing, but it was also kind of getting to the place of like, okay, all right, I'm sitting with the discomfort of this phase of life where there's a lot of loss. And it allowed me to then kind of get back to like, okay, and this being out of commission again, like forced to sit still. It's hard, but it's making me excited with the next thing, and I just want to make sure I say out loud that I don't put my own obstacles in my own way, because that's always been the thing. Like, I think I've been both afraid of success. I feared success and failure.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes I feared success more. I think I've gotten in my own way many times. So I don't want to do that. Because also the other thing, and thanks to you, I started listening to the Mel Robbins podcast.
So good.
Oh my God. And I got the Let Them book for Christmas.
Yes.
And
good.
It's so good. But like just the idea of trying to, move beyond the fear, just make the plan, do it, don't overthink it. That's where I'm trying to, and then just remembering though, stop to smell the roses, be present in the moment, enjoy the little things. Like that's a key to where I am right now when I'm feeling like there's a lot of things I can't do yet, but there's a lot of things I can do, and so I'm trying really hard to force myself to put like dates on the calendar, and like this was a great motivator to have this meeting, and I'm going to bug you to have another meeting so I can talk about my other plans. But again, key to the journey though has been like I put you as one of my catalyst people to when I'm feeling low or too much time on one's own in one's head ruminating. It's really important to have cheerleaders in your life, and you are one of mine, and I so appreciate it, and you always make me feel good when I'm feeling like, you didn't do this, you didn't, and I hope I do the same for you, and that's, but, as we get older, we need to find those people, and, like in my writing class, found a few people there I think might add to that mix. I got to, instead of the judges and the jury in the jury box, I need my cheerleading section. And that's what I need to build.
Oh, I love that.
And I think that's something I'm going to work on. So, but you're already in there. I just got to find you company. Jeff's always been a cheerleader. I've got a lot of cheerleaders, but there's different phases of life are challenging. I will say this middle-age piece with elder care and kids flown. This is a little, oof, it's a gut check. Like, what are you here for? What's your purpose? And it's good to have to sit with that.
Yes. Even if the movement is in our heads, it doesn't
Yes.
have to be physical movement.
Right.
You can sit and still move.
Yes,
while
mentally
thinking.
moving forward to the what ifs. Where's the path? Looking at that's where I
Yes.
am. I'm in an exploring phase right now, where I'm looking at options. But definitely the travel piece is really calling me heavily right now.
I can't wait to see what
Yeah.
you do in 2026.
I'm so
friend.
excited,
Thank
and
you
you
for-
too. And I'm so excited
Thank
to
you.
be here and talk about this. And oh, it's
I
exciting.
can't wait to share what you do next because I
Yeah.
know it'll be inspiring.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
as
you.
always.